Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on this really fall-like day. I'm very excited because it's nice and cool outside, finally really sick of all the hot weather. My name is Candace Summers. I'm the Senior Director of Education here at the museum, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Lunch and Learn featuring Andy Bender, Senior Vice President and Deputy General Counsel for Country and the Illinois Farm Bureau. But before I turn the program over to Andy, I'd like to thank our Lunch and Learn sponsor, MCK CPAs and Advisors, and our live stream sponsor, WGLT, your local public media, which is part of the NPR network. As a reminder, this program is being live streamed and recorded, so as I always tell people, if you don't want it to live on the internet forever, mind your P's and Q's. At the end, I'll also be moderating questions and answers if anybody has any. Please wait till I get to you with the microphone. That way our friends tuning in online can hear your questions. And after today's program, if you have not yet seen it, please stop by the first floor to view our temporary hallway exhibit celebrating a century of Country Financial. This display will be up through the end of the year, and to ensure the entire community can explore this exhibit, Country has generously sponsored free admission for all visitors every Tuesday for this year. And with that, I'd like to introduce Andy Bender.
Well, thank you for that warm welcome. I appreciate it. As we said, we're here to celebrate Country's 100th anniversary, so that's pretty fantastic. Excited to be here. Sorry, I need to take a drink here before I get started. But we already heard some of the great ways we can celebrate Country's 100th anniversary with the exhibit downstairs here. If you have not been there, I endorse it. It is just wonderful. And I guess at this point, I would also take the opportunity to thank the museum for being such a great partner with Country and helping us get our message out there and helping us celebrate our 100th anniversary. It's been just a great partnership. I know he's not here today. I saw him a little bit earlier, but I'm going to give a special shout out to Bill Kemp, the librarian here, who I had the pleasure of being on public television with, and he's just a wonderful individual. And he also took the time to come over and do a great presentation on Country's move down to Bloomington Normal with our employees over at our building, and I believe he's already given that presentation here, and just a wonderful presentation. If you didn't get a chance to see that, my understanding is it's out there on YouTube, and I would urge you to go out and search, if you search MC History, you'll be able to find that, and it is more than worth your time to hear that presentation by Bill. So I urge you to do that. One other way I'd mention is we're doing a little bit, putting some plugs in here. Another way you can help Country celebrate its 100th anniversary is head out to Raider Farms and check out the really cool corn maze. I haven't been out to experience it in person yet, but I've heard such cool things about it. You're going to want to go out there to Raider Farms and experience the Country-themed corn maze and walk through that, and hopefully you don't get too lost, particularly if it's a work day. So head on out there and take a look. So, and here I didn't turn on my clicker. So a little rusty here at presenting, but we are moving forward. So I really don't have much on this very first slide here, but it's a really fun slide. As you heard what I do here for Country, one of my first jobs with Country was doing a lot of intellectual property and trademark work, and I just love, these are just great to look at, right? This sort of the retro logos. I did not mean to do that. The retro logos, take a look, and that just is a piece of our history right there too, right? Fun to look at, neat things to experience, and just some of the things we've done over the years to get our name out there. So starting at the very beginning, and I want to step back here a little bit. I was thinking about this as I was preparing for this presentation. I think I need to make sure, and you all hold me accountable in the room here, if I start throwing out acronyms or I talk about something that you're like, hold on, what does that mean? Please stop me. But I want to talk a little bit before 1925. We're celebrating 100 years, and even an attorney can do the math on that. So when I start talking about 1916, don't worry. I understand how math works. My wife is a math teacher. But I want to start in 1916 because that's and again, founding of membership organizations, that can be a little sticky, but let's just use 1916 and say I've got the right date there. The founding of Illinois Farm Bureau or Illinois Agricultural Association. And so if you look on this slide, the upper right-hand corner, particularly for those people who are watching the live stream, and the Illinois is cut off a little bit there, but you see Illinois Agricultural Association record. The reason I want to talk about that is because you can't talk about country's history without talking about Illinois Agricultural Association, Illinois Farm Bureau. When I mention those organizations, that's the same organization. I'm using those interchangeably. The lawyer in me wants to say Illinois Agricultural Association because that's the legal name, but I think a lot of people in the area would more readily identify Illinois Farm Bureau. But we can't talk about one without the other. And the reason for that, and I'll now move away from that and go a little bit forward in time here. Country starts really in the early 20s, we'll say 1924, where Illinois Agricultural Association identifies that farmers in Illinois really are struggling with their insurance coverage and how much it costs and what's going on with that. So the Illinois Agricultural Association, in addition to all the other great things it's doing for farmers at the time, decides they need to do something about this insurance problem. And they form an insurance committee, which ultimately results in the formation of Farmers Mutual Reinsurance Company in 1925. Now, I want to take a moment to focus on another term that's thrown out in the name of that company, and that's reinsurance. I know we like to talk about very early on, and certainly it's true that the first products the country is offering directly to those farmer clients in those early days are fire and lightning and then crop hail. But really the roots of the company are in reinsurance. What is reinsurance? This is the point where if I didn't say that, you were all supposed to raise your hand and say, hold on, what's reinsurance? To really do it at a very high level and keep it simple, because we don't need to have a 45-minute presentation on reinsurance, it's insurance for insurance companies, okay? Insurance companies don't hold all the risk that they take on through their clients. It's just not something you do. We do this today. Country and any insurance company that you name out there is going to go out and obtain reinsurance coverage for their risks they take on. But why is this important? Why do we need a reinsurance company? Well, at the time, the way you're getting a lot of insurance in a rural setting in Illinois is you have these very small township-based farmer mutual insurance companies. And these folks are really running insurance companies almost on a part-time basis. It's not really a fully developed insurance company, and certainly these folks running these township mutuals can't hold all this risk. They just can't do it. It's not spreading the risk, over appropriate geographic ranges. Their clients are all the same. That one big disaster could put them under, and they're having trouble getting reinsurance. Enter what today's Country Insurance. Then, under the name of Farmers Mutual Reinsurance Company. So that's really the start of it. But very quickly, they realize, again, we have to talk about Illinois Farm Bureau. They realize we really have the system in place to sell this direct to consumers. Illinois Farm Bureau is connected to, at the time, I should have looked this up, I'm going to guess 102, maybe 101. That's not the number of counties in Illinois, but the number of county farm bureaus in Illinois. So they really have an office in every single county in the state, pretty much, where they can sell insurance directly to these consumers, okay? And that's what I want you to really realize. Country's roots are so tied with the Illinois Farm Bureau because the majority of the sales of insurance, when they finally start selling that direct fire and lightning coverage, is over the counter at a county farm bureau. There's no sort of professional agency force at the start. And it's really just a matter of walking into your county farm bureau and saying, I need some fire and lightning coverage. What can you do for me? So that's the genesis of this idea that's country, this fabulous idea that starts in the 1920s. And it's really also based on the idea that farmers are a preferred risk, okay? So today, when you go get your insurance, there's people a heck of a lot smarter than me, hopefully some of them are watching, the live stream so they know that I'm complimenting them, that figure out how much insurance should cost, right? Why is this risk appropriate and how do we price it out? It's not quite that sophisticated in the early 1920s. But what people knew at their core is I should not be charging the same rates for this rural risk that I might be charging for an urban risk, okay? And at their core, they knew that. And that's not only important in the fire and lightning, but if I could do a transition here, when they start talking about this thing called the automobile in 1926, okay? So really, I think that's where we're all gonna be able to comprehend the idea that in 1926, which vehicle do you want to insure? Do you want to insure the Model T that's driving around in Bond County, Illinois, or the Model T that's in downtown Chicago, right? And so that's where we are with this. And I guess I jumped a little ahead there. In 1926, that's when they started talking about the auto company. But by 1927, and it was Bond County where you had the first policy written by the auto company. And I always like to put this in perspective. I'm not a good person with dates, believe it or not, and I always like to relate it to something else that's going on that I can understand. And I looked this up, and right around the time they start this auto company is right at the time one of the last Model Ts is rolling off the line and Ford's transitioning to the Model A. So if that puts it in perspective for you of when this is happening. So the demand that's taking place, you think, okay, you decide farmers are preferred risk, we're gonna start selling auto insurance too. What sort of demand is there in 1927 for this? 425 new policies per month for the first 3 months of this auto company. That's pretty fantastic sales, right? I also looked this up, 1927, you have 5 workers dedicated in the home office up in Chicago to processing auto applications. I mean, now we'd be done. Even with technology, we couldn't handle it with 5 people. But remember, a lot of this work is being done still in those county farm bureaus, right? But to process those applications, we had 5 full people. By 1938, that was up to 15 employees processing those applications, and they were seeing 1,000 a month. So really rapid growth in this period. And you think about it, right? We're just getting started here. And it's rapid fire. These people are visionaries. You got to think about this. This is not something you just decide you're going to do. Somebody has to have the vision to do this and be willing to take on the risk to form a fire and lightning company, an auto company. They need to serve their farmer members. We're missing something here, though. Farming's a dangerous job, right? We need to protect the life of these people and the legacy of these folks who are out there farming, bringing food and fiber to the rest of America. And so what do we do in 1929 at the very start of the Great Depression, right? We're not doing this at a time when it's easy to do business. We're going to form a life company. We're going to make sure that our farmers out there, their legacy is protected. So we formed the life company really right there at the outset of the Great Depression. And I've realized right now as I check my notes, I'm looking down, I forgot a big part of this. Not only are the farmers the preferred risk, but they're taking another unique approach to what they're doing. It's not sort of this big insurance company, even at the time, who's just going to write the policy and move on. There's a lot of safety and programs involved here. Fire and lightning, they're going out, they're looking at these barns they're covering, and they're telling people how to make sure you keep your barn from burning down if you do have the lightning strike, or what can you do? Can you put the lightning rod up? Same with the auto insurance, and we're going to talk about that later on some other slides here about how those safety programs continue out into the future. And it's the same thing with life. They decide, we're not just going to, cover these folks with their life insurance. We're going to talk to them about health education. And they're doing that in 1929. How is that not ahead of your time? I just get excited when I hear that. It's a really neat thing. And so in the first 7 years, how successful is Country Life? In the first 7 years, they managed to have $100 million. Remember the time we're talking about here, just going into the 1930s, $100 million in insurance coverage out there. It's pretty neat, right? just visionaries. I'm probably the only one who's getting goosebumps over that. I'm sorry, but it's so neat. And so let's talk a little bit more when we go into the 30s about visionary things here. I'm going to go straight to the last part of this because it's my favorite thing. 1936, Country Life hires their first female agent to go out and sell life insurance for the company. I know we all kind of sit back and go, of course, why wouldn't you? But you're doing this in 1936. That's ahead of their time. Amboy, Illinois, selling life insurance for the company. Definitely people who are ahead of their time. But I also want to talk about the changes you see in the 30s. I talked about this, and let me be clear. Country still does not exist in this era and can't do the things they need to do without their county farm bureau system. But some things start changing. One of the things that the state of Illinois decides is they need to license insurance agents, all right? What does that mean? You can't just have somebody standing in a county farm bureau anymore that's not a licensed insurance agent. So, Country, again, being a trailblazer, decides we're going to educate these people. We're going to go out there and we're going to teach them how to pass their licensure exams, and they're going to be licensed insurance agents. But they also realize that they need a professional sales force. It can't just be that. And so they start developing a professional sales force. And this is the period, too, where what Country starts doing is they realize it can't be an insurance division of the Illinois Farm Bureau, of IAA. It needs its own professional management, and they start moving towards a more modern insurance company. The other thing that happens in this period where we start moving and pushing the company to modernize is driving patterns start changing. Now, I come from a long line of auto mechanics. In fact, what was going on in this period of time, my great-grandfather was probably fixing a lot of those cars. Those cars got a lot more reliable. I mean, if we hopped in those cars today, we'd feel like this was the most primitive vehicle we've ever seen. But the reality of it is it was getting a lot more reliable. So what do those folks in those rural areas start doing with those vehicles? They start driving them just a little bit further, right? They're going places that they typically weren't going. That starts changing that risk profile, right? And I'm not going to tell you that much changed in that underwriting process at this time, but I think it was identified in this period, and the idea that we got to keep an eye on this and we've got to figure out how do we keep those preferred risks where they belong and price this insurance the right way. I think they're thinking about it this time. I don't think they have the answer for it. We'll see that answer here in a few more slides, though. Okay, so we move to the 40s. And I think as we talk about this, and so as not to forget, and I get a little distracted, I get really excited about talking about these things, but we have these wonderful items from our archives in front of me. And before I forget, I'm going to mention the first one so I don't move on without talking about it. But right up here in the front corner, and I do think for the live stream, are we able to, so I shouldn't pick it up for the room then either, because, oh, I can, okay. So over here, what we have from that era is the agent's instruction manual. Just a really neat item. And as you look through this, I mean, it starts off, it's got a history of the company in it. It talks about things that I don't even, how the company's formed, things that as a lawyer, I'm not sure I even understand. But it's really neat because as you get in here, you start seeing the rates, right? It's got a rate sheet, and I don't know if anybody can see that from where they're sitting. But the other fascinating thing I found is when you get back in here, it lists the various models of cars and what group and the list price for the automobile. And listen, in today's age, where we all have a computer in our pocket, right, that has more power than when we went to the moon. This has more computing power than that. And we could change these things at an instant. How often, these things had to be expensive to print, right? How often did they change that?
What date was that, Andy?
That one is, I don't have the date on that at fingertips here. Let's see. Katie, do you know? the exact date on this one. It's from the 40s, right? It's from the 40s. 46? Well, you know what? If I look at the vehicles only go through 33, but it's still from the 40s. So just a really neat item there. But what do we have going on in the 40s? Well, a lot of things. You see the increase we talk about in the policies, continued growth. And remember, so if we jump back to where I started, shouldn't do that, but you know, we start this Farm Bureau in the middle of a little thing called World War I. We decide that we're going to do that there. They start the Life Company at the front end of the Great Depression. Well, we continue our growth through World War II, right? And that's what we're experiencing here. At this point, this little company that starts with selling insurance over the counter at county farm bureaus has 400 full-time professional insurance agents. And another thing that gets a little bit, well, here we talk about it there, start modernizing that corporate structure. The lawyer's interested in this. 1925, we formed the Farmers Mutual Reinsurance Company. 1946, that gets renamed more appropriately, right? It's not just a reinsurance company anymore. They still do reinsurance, but it's the Country Mutual Fire Company. And this is where we start bringing together that country name. We had it on the Life Company. Let's bring it into the Property and Casualty. Don't use the acronyms. Property and Casualty Company. And then also the Auto Company, the Illinois Agricultural Mutual Insurance Company in 1946 is renamed Country Mutual Casualty Company. And yes, I have to check my notes because the names are all very similar, and I won't give you the alphabet soup of the changes that took place in the 60s and the 70s there, which all the names sound very similar if you're not paying attention. But continued growth through the 40s. Then we really start, I'm going to really geek out when we get in the 50s and 60s, so everybody make sure I keep moving. And before we do it, let's do the items again here so I don't forget about them. And this one's really neat, and I had to ask Katie, and I keep referencing Katie, our archivist, and I just love having conversations with her, and I confirmed this before we started this presentation. But this briefcase we have here is what we believe we would see a typical agent briefcase out there in the 1950s, and the cool thing is we believe this was donated as an actual, not the contents necessarily, but the briefcase was actually one of our agents' briefcases. So cool. And you see, we've got a period camera in there. Got to take photos. You know, we start doing that. It's not driving up to the county farm bureau and saying, "See the dent in my car." It's now you're going to take some photos. You got a ruler measure. You got of course, branded on-brand tape measure. All sorts of cool things to take your notes. You got a plat book in there, so you know where the farm is and who owns this piece of property. Just a really neat item. The next item. Oh, I love this one. A rooster paperweight, because our agents are up with the roosters, right? That rooster crows, and we're out there and we're working for our clients and helping them out, making sure they've got the coverage they need. Let's see. Everybody loves the clock, right? And the great thing, and yes, it's damaged, that Andy tripped over it or something I think happened. That's not true. We also have one of these that's intact, which is really cool if you get to see that, run down to the archives and see it. The thing I loved is we talked about in that very first slide all of the different logos and the images we had. This just encapsulates the Country Mutual Fire Company, and notice we have the triangles off of it with the IAA, which Illinois Agricultural Association, still recognizing that tie and how important it is in that period. And of course on the table here, and I'm not going to pick them up, but we have, again, I'll pick the largest one up so we can see it, the IAA with the CC in it. And I guess I'll talk about the CC a little bit here in just a minute. But these are so cool. I think everybody loves, I hate to use the cliched term retro, but everybody loves the retro logos, and they're just so cool. And hopefully everybody, after the presentation, you have a chance to come up and see these a little bit more closely. But 1950s, just a great time. This is the point, I guess I will talk a little bit about the alphabet soup. We have the Mutual Fire Company and the Casual Company merge into one, and that is Country Mutual Insurance Company, and that is really the modern day Country Mutual Insurance Company we have today. That took place in 1957. Talking a little bit about the logos and the CC, and I'll tell you, I started with the company in 2004. 2004, and I was the intellectual property attorney pretty much the day I hit the office. And we've been country since before I worked there, but you can't get away from country companies. What a lasting, just that name, and that's what the CC appears there, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those logos. And you know what? I don't want to hide from that. I love it when people in the community, even though it's a little bit dated when they call us country companies, why wouldn't we embrace that? It's just such a beautiful thing, such a neat logo, and that's out of this period. And again, I would talk about here, I promised you I'd mention it again, 50s, you are really seeing the change in the driving habits of the general public. Those farm cars are now going all sorts of places. And it is just really wiping out that idea, particularly in the auto space, that there's still a preferred risk, right? Because those vehicles are being driven in more rural settings most of the time, but they're driving them every place. So at this point, we really haven't developed the idea of what you think of as a more modern way to price that on insurance. But what does country do? And I did not know this when I first started there. Again, let's do some safety programs. Let's talk to people about how they drive, what they should be doing behind the wheel, not just to keep our rates down, but to keep people safe, right? These are our insureds, these are our neighbors, these are our people we care about. We want to make sure they're happy and healthy. And so they launched this program. I had no idea that the auto skid program was something that came out of the 50s. When I started, it was this, I'm going to use the term virtual reality very loosely. It was sort of this computerized, it was directed towards teens when I started, that they put them in front of a computer screen, and it's sort of like a rudimentary video game-ish thing to teach them about safe driving and that. That dates to the 50s. And that program successfully continued on for just years and years. So that's how they're addressing those issues in the 50s. Now we're going to talk about, I'm not going to say my favorite era in country, but if you love country and you care about country, you need to understand about all the things that happened in the 1960s, because this is what differentiates and makes country so special today compared to some other insurance companies maybe that are from that era that did not decide that they needed to grow and become something more than where they started. And the visionaries that we had from those 20s and 30s, maybe some of them are still around, but we got new visionaries, and they really carried us into something in the 60s. This, and I'm not going to belabor this point because I think Bill Kemp, and I gave the advertisement for this, go watch his presentation. This is when country, along with the Illinois Farm Bureau, decides, you know, if we have all these rural-based customers, what are we doing being centered in Chicago? And in addition to that, they just quite frankly had moved, I think 3 or 4 times in the Chicago area, and they were out of space. They were growing by leaps and bounds, and they didn't have the room. They're bursting at the seams. So after a lengthy, I won't get into it, go watch Bill's presentation, they land in Bloomington. And just what a wonderful thing, 1961, they opened that building over on Towanda Avenue, my home away from home for the last 20-some years. That's a big deal. What else do? They decide, and they didn't call him a CEO at the time, they decide they need one person to run all this, a CEO. We called him an executive vice president. He eventually did have the title of CEO, but a man named Daryl Achenbach. And he became what was really the first CEO over all the country insurance operations. In that process, what else do we have happening? Country Life does a little feat. They have $1 billion of life insurance in force. No small task, right? And remember, the first billion's the hardest because you're going to see how quickly it comes, the second billion comes. It's not quite the same amount of time between the first billion, right? That first billion's the hardest, at least that's my experience, right, everyone? The biggest thing here, in my opinion, 1964, the country entities acquire a company out of Missouri called Mid-America Fire and Marine Insurance Company. This puts country beyond the state of Illinois for the first time. I know it sounds amazing, but it was not until the 60s. And this is really important. I think we all understand at the core of it that if you're insuring properties or autos or whatever you're insuring, this day and age with the way the weather is, if a big hailstorm runs through a place and you are the insurer in that area and you can't spread your risk around geographically in addition to other ways, that's a problem. And back in 1964, our leadership saw that, and they made the decision. And I won't get into it, but it was a bold decision. It was a very bold decision. And it has just paid benefits for country decades after it. Really a neat thing. Something else we need to talk a little bit about here, and it's a little more fun, as we look at Big Gus up here in the right-hand corner. And it's biggest, right? And we don't know why, but as we're out there trying to, sell life insurance, we thought the agency force would be really neat to put on bowler hats and fake mustaches down here in the center. And that would really go out there and be a great campaign to sell life insurance. I don't know if that's so visionary, but gosh darn it, it worked. And that's what propelled them, on their way to the $1 billion. Just really, really fun things. And I will tell you that to this day, the spirit of our agency force, that's still there. They're doing a serious job. They're taking care of people. They care about their clients. They care about protecting what they have. They care about protecting their lives, but they have fun doing it. I had the pleasure of sitting with some of our agency force this week, and they're just great people. And I think that's another thing that makes us so special as a company. So, I'll reluctantly move on from the 60s. Oh no, I didn't do the items. See, this is where I gotta pay attention to my notes. All right, we'll come out here a little bit. Where is it? Here's one of the favorites, right? And I don't even probably need to talk too much about this, but we move to Bloomington 1961 into the new building. I think everybody's heard of Lady the dog, right? And so this is one of our caretakers. Oh, I've got it. I'm sorry. Sorry. One of the caretakers of the original building, and gosh darn it, I don't know his name. Anybody know his name? No? Okay, no, that's fine. I'm the one who should know it. Everybody knows Lady the dog. And just this mascot around the grounds, and Lady is still buried on the grounds of the building at 1701 Towanda. They did have to move her gravesite, I believe, with one of the expansions. But if you want, come to my office. I'm pretty sure I know where the marker is for Lady the dog. It's worth the trip. You'll get your steps in if you take a trip and go see Lady. So that's a special one. Aerial photo of the building. And that one looks like, I don't know what period that's from, but that looks like it's got the addition of the upper floor on it. So that one would be post 67? Well, anyway, aerial photo of the building. All right, this is one where I'm going to have to contradict myself a little bit about our progressiveness, but wonderful when you hit the $1 billion in life insurance in force. We felt like we needed to give a bracelet out to the ladies involved, and so it's, I hate to say it this way, because we obviously even in this period had female agents, but typically thought of as being given to the agents' wives, and I think the support staff. And again, we have male support staff, but nonetheless, that was the idea from that period, and also have a desk paperweight from the same period on the $1 billion of life insurance in force. Oh, and I almost forgot the big, beautiful plaque here with I believe, right, we've got the pen that wrote the application on the plaque. So that's one that you're going to want to come up and see at the end. Just a great, great piece of history. Now I am going to move reluctantly on from the 60s, and I better watch. Oh, I'm behind quite a bit, aren't Um, so let's blow through the 70s. That first billion is the hardest, but in the 70s already, right? We're at 2 billion. And then this is a period where we start and continue to have, to this day, our relationship with high school sports and the IHSA in the state of Illinois. And I'll come around and talk about the items we have there. I'm going to leave those last two. I'm going to talk about the items on those two. But one of the things I want to throw in here before I talk about the logo is a gentleman by the name of Dwayne Miller, who I never had the pleasure of meeting. I think Dwayne is possibly still alive out west somewhere. But this gentleman in 1974 became the CEO of Country and was the CEO for a very long time. He was a surprise choice, and that's not my statement, that's in the history books, because he was so young and that's why he was CEO for so long. Nobody really expected him to be named the CEO given his age. Just one of those folks who understood about running an insurance company and making sure we march towards the future and not the past. Really wish I had the privilege of meeting him, but just a fantastic guy. The trademark attorney in me has got to talk about this image down here. And again, let's embrace the country companies. And that is an image I think everybody, that neat sort of striped barred logo is one that we all sort of feel in our core when we think about Country to this day. It's retro and we love it, but it's just a great logo. There's a couple things we want to point out, and I'm going to kind of not give them their due here, but some of the neat items we have representing our relationship with IHSA, but I can't not spend time over here with Mr. Reddy, okay? We all familiar with Reddy Writer, right, from the era? God bless him, bless his heart, right? This one down here, we have photos of Reddy. This is the Reddy that I came into the organization knowing. Reddy Dog, and I did some of the intellectual property work with this guy. He's really fuzzy and cute. I know that Reddy was started to help children understand the safety of being on bikes and scooters and skateboards. I feel better about fuzzy Reddy than this guy, right? I want this guy telling me how to be safe on a bicycle, but it's the time. And again, I'm making light of this, but let's think of the progressive nature of this here too, right? And our company is more than one that we don't want to just reduce our risk. We want to make people's lives better. We don't want children getting hurt. And so we go out there and go out to the schools and we talk about bike safety. We give kids buttons. There's a neat, I call it a comic book. It's not here, but it's a little pamphlet that's sort of in a comic book-esque thing. And this is the first day I've seen these. And then after we go to the classroom, we ask children to send birthday cards to Reddy so they don't forget about him, right? And, yeah, it's fun, but it helps them remember when and listen, from this era, I'm kind of from this era. This is my childhood era. I always find that surprising. That's a little tidbit for you there. But again, the theme of looking ahead, dealing with things before they become a real problem. You see them up here, and I gotta go, we form a storm team. I know that just seems like table stakes today, right? When you think of your insurance company, of course they have a team that runs into where the catastrophe occurred. You run into that, you take care of people. we know that today, but that wasn't what we're all doing in 1980. And, we have a couple of instances and certainly horrible events, but country was there for their clients. 1989, you have a hailstorm, Memorial Day. I don't know if this is still true, but at the time, at least, and for many years after, single largest loss in the history of Country Mutual at $15 million in property and auto damage and $2 million in damage of crops. We were there for our clients. We took care of them. 1989 also, you have the Allendale, Illinois tornado. Destroys half of the town. Country's there. They have paid on 150 homes, 4 days, they had those claims settled for their clients. They were there for them because of these innovations of having these storm teams. Other things we're doing at this time. We have the start of reps being in the business of using email this early. So that's 1984. I like this one, 1983. You can do a quote using dial-up network. We can all hear the sound in our heads right now of that dial-up network, right? Those are all just great things, but we're using the technology as we can. Also at this time in the mid-'80s, 86, country expands it out into the Northwest. So they do a deal I say Northwest. When I say Nevada, you're going to say Northwest. That's what we call it. That's more of an internal term. But Oregon and Washington also included Nevada. I do have at least some geographic sense there, but it's the Oregon and Washington that we tend to focus on there. Before I move on, we have some great items up here out in front, and I won't walk around this time, save a little time. Storm jacket team, because if you're in that situation, you need a way to be identified as a person who's there to help, right? I'm here to help with your claim. Storm jacket. We also have, and I want to leave that one for the last because it's one of my favorite. There's a magnet that was something that was, I'm sure, a giveaway so people knew who to call and their 800 number on here. I'm going to go pick this one up because I just want to know how much it weighs. But talk about modern technology. Look at this thing. It's heavy. A tough book. So our storm teams can be out there and they can be connected with this really modern laptop, right? My back hurt before I picked it up, and now it really hurts. So, true story. True story. Okay, where we go? Oh, that's the wrong direction, Andy. People want to eat lunch, so let's keep moving. 2000s. So the greatest thing that country was able to do in the 2000s was hire me. No, wait. Who put that in the presentation? No, that's not true. Not true at all. I already talked about Ready. This is the period where we see the modern Ready. He's a little more fuzzy. And what do? We put out a website. Because you would have a website for readykids.com, right? Of course you would in the early 2000s. So again, same messages, same safety messages, taking care of our clients' children, making sure they're safe, but we bring it about now instead of handing out buttons and going to the classroom. Still doing some of that, but really we're going to reach them through the internet. We'll do it that way. 2001, John Blackburn, who some of you in the room I know, became CEO of Country. Kind of rapid fire down these. Then 2012 was Mr. Kirk Bach, and followed by our current CEO, Jim Jacobs, in 2019. I felt like all of them deserved a shout out, so I just felt like that personally, so I put that in there. Cell phone usage becomes a thing, right? And that's an issue, right? You know, today we all kind of think about that people, it's a stigma now. I think it's a stigma. It certainly is in my house with my children. I tell them you better not touch your phone when you're driving a car. And we have laws about that now. There's a comedian who says you can't use your cell phone. You can write out a letter longhand in a car. You can't give you a ticket for that. Jokes aside, it's a serious issue, right? And Country's ahead of the game on this. And they launch a safety program yet again called Just Drive. And I think the name of it tells you exactly the message there. You shouldn't be texting. You shouldn't be holding your phone up to your ear. Just drive. And again, certainly that's an issue, again, of trying to reduce those claims, but it's also keeping our clients safe. What other things? We'll do the accolades here, and I'll do them rapid fire. Probably not what my CorpCom people want me to do, but we'll do them rapid fire. April edition in 2004 Fortune magazine, listed in the Fortune 1000 for the first time. What other accolades do we have here? I guess that, let's talk about a few other things that there's the other accolade, I found it. 2024, I would have gotten in trouble if I missed one, 2024, and it's a big one, let's be real. Country Life, the #1 life insurer in the US. I guess I shouldn't go over that too quickly. That's a big deal. Little company here in Bloomington, Illinois, started in 1925, and we're the #1 life insurer. That's pretty special. Let's talk about some other things that are happening in this period. And we all lived it, right? Let's talk about COVID-19, 2020. Nobody enjoyed that. We were there for our clients. We kept doing business. I know everybody did. I know we all did. Whatever we did, we had to keep going. But I think we did it in an especially great fashion. I'm proud. I was there. I lived through it. I saw what all our employees did and how they kept things going, even when all the things, all the concerns of a global pandemic, and we kept the lights on, kept doing what we needed to do, just as we did, whether you're talking about the Great Depression, World War II, all those other things we've been through. And I'll tell you, history's going to say that that was as big of a deal as those other things. It was not easy. And to those of our employees that were there for that and are listening to this, I'll just say thank you. It was tough, and I appreciate all you did, and I'm proud of what we did for our clients during that period of time. Continued use of talking about technology, 2018. That's when we start using drones out there, right? Again, it seems like today we hear about drones. Of course you use drones, right? But I remember when we started talking about that, it wasn't a given that it was even going to work, or it was something that was, manageable. But we pushed forward, we adopted the technology, and now it's almost automatic. I hate to say it, I had a roof claim. I didn't want a roof claim. That hailstorm hit my house. How did they come out? The adjuster comes out, they bring the drone. The only regret I have is I wasn't there to see it. My wife was there and was taking care of it. But continue use of that. And then I would also mention, and I got to explain this one probably a little bit, 2021, we roll out a telematics program. And this is, I think, a good place to maybe sort of wrap up, not only because I'm behind, but I talked about that idea of the farmer being the preferred risk, and that's how we were going to price this insurance, right? Telematics, if you're not familiar with it, you all are familiar with it, but you may not know it under telematics. It's the idea of whether it's on your phone or in the early days of telematics, it was a thing you plugged into your maintenance port on your automobile, and it's the idea that you can get real-time driving information about your driver, and you can, I have to be careful because I know what we do, I know how we do it. Ours is based on a discount. I know some insurers do it based on that's going to determine your rate. We provide a discount. But the idea that we've come from a very humble beginning of looking at this idea that we have preferred rates for farmers because they're a better risk, to having information of that very computer that's sitting in all our pockets, and we can determine what sort of insurance risk you are as you drive. And I don't know, it's just pretty special to me when I think about it. And it's a point of pride that you can take a point in time 100 years ago, and that idea that started there comes all the way to the future. And we didn't let time pass us by. We accepted the changes in the world, and we worked through it, and we adopted the technology and the processes we needed to do to be a fully modern and contemporary company today. So I'm sure I missed a lot of all, and I forgot to thank all the wonderful people. I'm the guy standing up here talking, particularly in this corner over here, and then the wonderful folks at the museum who made this possible. I forgot to thank you at the beginning, but you see I talk a lot and I get going. But I'm just the puppet up here. I'm Mr. Reddy, delivering a message that so many great people put together and brought this information to you today. And I just want to say thank you to you all. Thanks for the partnership from the museum. And if we have any time left, because I talk too much, let's take some questions if there are any.
Any questions? Oh.
Andy, can you speak to the time capsule?
Oh, thank thank you, because that's the big thing I missed. Thank you so much. So, obviously for our 100th anniversary, thank you so much for that question. I'm doing nothing. I'm talking about it. But these great folks are putting together a time capsule. And I don't know that we have all the things we're going to place in the time capsule so that the folks in the future can, you know, some guy who can stay on script and do a better job 100 years from now can open up and pull out these things that we can talk about. And what we do know we're incorporating into the time capsule at this time, we have had such a great time celebrating our 100th anniversary already. We have some of the great items. And we have shirts, we have different plaques, we have water bottles, all sorts of things. But I'm going to pick up and talk about, and I should have worn mine today, but I wanted to be a little bit more dressed up, even though I was on brand. These shoes have been so popular, and they're country branded shoes. And I think that, you know what, I'll go on and on about this, but I've thought about this so much about these shoes and the way attire has changed in the workplace and the way we look at things that go on in the workplace. And honestly, COVID was a big driver of that, right? We all had to come back to the office and we're like, I didn't buy any dress clothes for the last year and a half. I don't have, and I always view this as, I got HR people here, I gotta be careful. I always view this as the loophole in our dress code because I don't think you're technically allowed to wear sneakers, but when you wear branded sneakers, nobody's gonna give you a hard time. But these are just wonderful, and this actual pair is going in the time capsule, right? Yes or no? Okay, this actual pair. Just been so popular, and I'll tell you right now, if you walk around, particularly on Wednesdays, which is, what's the official thing called, like wear your brand? Got it right, wear your brand. You're gonna see so many of these shoes in our home office on Wednesdays, among other days. So those are just some of the items. We're still working through exactly, we have the actual time capsule here, and I'm sure we will, probably by the time we get done, we'll be trying to figure out how we push that. We won't do that. Don't worry, we won't push it down in there, but great question, and thank you for keeping me on point.
Any other questions? No? All right. Wait.
So you mentioned Dwayne Miller. I had the pleasure of working with Dwayne Miller when I worked at Illinois State University, and he was a very interesting guy. The last time I met with him was before I retired from the university, and he was still in Arizona, is where he was at. So I'm assuming he may be there now. But very interesting guy. A cool little story was my house got hit by a tornado when we lived in Hayworth. At the time, country had that slogan, real people, real answers, real quick.
Yep.
And I told Dwayne that story, and he goes, we should have canceled your policy. But then he went on and he goes, maybe we should have you on a commercial. So he was a really nice guy, and he was a visionary that carried country forward.
He was, and I would tell you that I did not my understanding is he's still alive. That I had cause to kind of research that. My understanding, he's up there in years if he's still around. Your story matches a lot of stories I've heard from him, sort of this maybe jokingly gruff answer to something followed up by sort of a little more to it. Yeah, that matches with the stories I've heard.
All right. Well, thank you, Andy, once again for a fantastic presentation. And thank you for bringing all these wonderful items. I was peeking at them early. Thank you to Country for bringing them. This is just a nice, cool little time capsule in itself right here in the courtroom. I want to thank everyone for joining us, no matter where you are today. And once again, thank you, MCK, CPAs, and advisors for sponsoring our Lunch and Learn series, and WGLT for sponsoring our live stream. Again, if you haven't had a chance, please stop down and look at the hallway display for Country through the end of this year. And we hope you will join us next month on Thursday, November 13th, to learn more about the Wizard of Oz's connection to McLean County and Illinois with Decatur historian Mark W. Sorensen. So thank you, and I hope you can get out and enjoy this beautiful fall day today.